Hi everybody, Lori here. Thank you so much for joining me today. I've got a fun project to share with you that are going to be featuring some delicious new distress embossing glaze colors that just came out with Tim Holtz, and they are available now at Simon Says Stamp. He had a little release in July with some new colors, and I'm excited to kind of showcase a few of them. And what they are basically are colored embossing powders, but he calls them Distress Embossing Glaze, and they are in his signature Distress ink color. So I have a panel of white cardstock. I'm just using hammer mill, and I'm going to blend with the same colors that I'll be embossing with. So we have abandoned coral, and I've got my little Distress mini ink cubes here in the little ink stand. Holds them steady when you're doing a bunch of colors. So we got a little bit of abandoned coral, and then we've got spiced marmalade, squeezed lemonade, crushed olive, peacock feathers, and I believe at the end I rounded it out with a little mermaid lagoon. And these really are my tried and true. I don't even know how many years I have had these Distress mini ink cubes. I've never had to re-ink them, and they are just steady eddies. They never let you down. And they react beautifully with water. And it's a nice little base coat. I'm not going heavy-handed. I'm not doing any gradient love. I'm just trying to get a somewhat smooth transition between the colors, but I'm not trying to be perfect. I am going on a bit of an angle. So I went from the spiced marmalade into the squeezed lemonade, and now I'm going into the crushed olive. I am also using my Simon Says Stamp blender brushes, which, by the way, are slightly larger than most other brands, which is nice when you want to cover a lot of area with minimal effort. Okay, going back into that squeezed lemonade, trying to smooth out that transition. You don't have to be too perfect because we are going to be embossing over top of this. So going into that crushed olive, a little peacock feathers. And that mixed, the peacock feathers mixed with the crushed olive. And that's where you get magic. Right there in the overlap sweet spot. And then down at the corner, there's not much room for it, but one of my favorites, Mermaid Lagoon. I love the name. I love the color. I love it all. I did pull out a waffle flower brush because it was more like the color I was using. My Simon one is like a real royal blue, and I do try to grab a brush that is somewhat similar to the color that I'm blending. But I don't have specific brushes for all my inks. Okay, putting this on the full-size Misty, and now to do the Distress Embossing Glazes, I'm going to stamp or emboss some stripes. This is an oldie but a goodie. The Basic Stripes stamp set came out a long time ago, but it will never ever go out of style. And I've created some mighty fine plaids. I even thought about doing a little plaid here, but I'm just going to do stripes. Keeping it very simple so you can really see what those Distress Embossing Glazes look like. So I'm lining up 3 different thicknesses from the Basic Stripes. I'm just eyeballing it here, trying to make them parallel. No fuss, no muss, right? Okay, now one thing I should have done and I didn't do was rub this panel, the ink blended panel, down with the embossing powder tool. And I'll regret that later, you'll see here. But I forgot to do it, and I almost always do that. But I was just getting giddy. I was getting giddy about the Distress Glazes. And okay, so I'm using Versamark here. Any type of embossing ink will work beautifully with these Distress Glazes. And these little Basic Stripes come in an array of thicknesses. And I just willy-nilly just chose 3 different ones. I am stamping it a couple times. Twice, maybe thrice. You know what they say, stamp it thrice to make it nice. Ooh, I don't know if I like that jingle. Okay, first color is the Spice Marmalade because I'm doing it over where I blended the Spice Marmalade. So we're going kind of tone on tone. And this is popping. I mean, this is a poppin' orange. This would be great for Halloween. And I'm just doing it over some scrap paper, funnel it right back in. Try not to make a horrendous mess. And what's this next color? Crushed olive, I believe. I'm pouring some of that crushed olive distress glaze. Here's where I regret not doing the embossing powder tool. It stuck a little bit, which is odd because none of the other ones stuck, but that particular area must have been still damp from the ink blending. No problem, I just took a dry brush and just kind of got off the excess. It really came off easily. Lastly here, down on the bottom, I believe that was peacock feathers. Okay, so since I have my stripes already mounted and I didn't, want to exert any needless energy, I just flipped my panel over and I'm going to use those same stripes. I know they're already parallel. I'm going to stamp them again. This time I am going to remember to take that little embossing powder tool. And it does help, let me tell you. Carefully in between. I haven't heat embossed anything yet. I'm going to do that all in one big shebang. Okay, so inking up these strips again with Versamark ink, and going to stamp it a couple times. Now, when these embossing glazes came in the mail, I wanted a little inspiration, and I watched a really old demo of Tim Holtz. He was at a craft fair, and he was demoing the distress glazes, and he was showing all kinds of fun techniques and just telling so much information about them and what they can do, and different techniques and different, what does he call them, substrates. And then I watched a video by Jennifer McGuire, and she did something similar to what I'm doing, where you blend, and then she uses some stamps and poured the embossing glaze over it. Now here I'm doing squeezed lemonade on that one stripe right there. See how vivid that squeezed lemonade is? It did get down on the bottom stripe, which I don't want, and I just rubbed it off, and it seemed to work too, because that bottom little stripe is going to be red, the abandoned coral, and it was still sticky enough that you got that little dab of red, which you got to have that pop of red down in the corner. And then here I pulled out Mowed Lawn. That was kind of where the crushed olive and the peacock feathers started to overlap, and I just needed something to go there. So I poured the Mowed Lawn Distress Embossing Glaze, and that gave it a nice kick of green. Okay, I pulled out the Simon's Stamp glass mat, and when I'm going to emboss like a big area, like an entire panel, I like to emboss on the glass mat and use my tweezers to kind of hold it down. I've got my embossing gun piping hot, so it doesn't take very long. Now the sheen, when this stuff melts, is gorgeous. I'll hold it up and show you. I don't know if you can see if the light catches it, but it's got a great shimmer, great shine, great pop of vibrancy on top of that blended background. And now I'm going to pop this up. I trimmed it down quite a bit, popping it up on a white card base. Looks really clean and colorful. For a sentiment, I'm using the Oh Happy Day, which is a big bold word die, and a shadow backer, which I'm doing the background of vellum, the word die out of matte gold. Take those off camera, run them through the die cutting machine, and there you have it. Now I'm going to pop this up, because dimension is life. So I put teeny tiny little slivers behind the Oh Happy Day, popping it up on that vellum, and then, not that you have to, but I love to, a little more foam tape on the back of that vellum, strategically placed so you don't see it. Now let's talk placement. Put it straight, cock it to the side, live your best life, keep it edgy, keep it fresh. Embellishments. A lot of times I go for the clear drops, but I've been on a little enamel dot kick lately, and I love them. They're just cheery, and this card is giving me all kinds of cheeriness. Make sure and check out the new July release with Tim Holtz, his new Distress Embossing Glazes, some new Halloween products, everything available at Simon's Stamp. Thank you so much for joining me. Have a wonderful day, and I will see you next time.